Welcome to the Deep Dive. So glad you could join us today. We're about to take a really fascinating plunge into, well, a truly remarkable book. It's The Art of Happiness, which is this amazing collaboration between His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Dr. Howard C. Cutler. And our mission here, like always, is to sort of sift through these really rich sources, pull out the absolute key insights, give you that shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. We'll definitely uncover some surprising facts, tie them into these really powerful principles, and maybe even have a little fun along the way, help you see these ideas in maybe a fresh light.
It really is an extraordinary book, isn't it? I mean, you've got this spiritual leader of Tibetan Buddhism in this real dialogue with a Western psychiatrist. It's quite unique. And this blend, this mix of Eastern wisdom and, modern Western scientific thought. The goal is really to find these universal principles for genuine happiness, stuff that applies to everyone, really, not just Buddhists.
Absolutely. And we're definitely going to unpack some really compelling stories straight from the book, connect them to these big principles, and hopefully discover together what we can learn about, cultivating a more joyful life. Let's dive right in. The purpose of life, cultivating inner contentment. Okay, so right out of the gate, the Dalai Lama makes this, it's a pretty bold assertion, isn't it? He says the very purpose of our life is to seek happiness. Now, for some people, that might sound a bit, indulgent, maybe even unrealistic. I mean, you contrast that with some Western views, like Freud's.
Oh, yeah, Freud was famously grim about it.
Right. He basically said the whole idea of humans being happy wasn't really in the plan of creation. So the question is happiness really a reasonable goal for most of us, given all the challenges?
And the Dalai Lama's answer is just this incredibly confident yes. He really, truly believes happiness is achievable. But crucially, not so much through changing our external circumstances, but through what he calls training the mind. And, when he says mind, it's important to get the Tibetan word he uses, sem. Sem.
Okay.
Yeah, it's much broader than just our intellect. It's more like our whole psyche or spirit. It includes intellect, sure, but also feelings, heart, our core mental state, the whole package.
Okay, that makes sense. So if we're aiming to train this sem, what does that actually look like, practically speaking?
Well, it starts with a method that sounds maybe surprisingly simple. It's about consciously identifying the things that consistently lead to happiness. And on the flip side, the things that lead to suffering.
Right, spotting the patterns.
Exactly. And once you're aware of them, the work begins. Systematically trying to eliminate what causes the suffering and actively, consciously cultivating what brings the happiness. It sounds simple, but it takes real, consistent effort.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. It challenges that common idea that pursuing your own happiness is somehow selfish. But the book points out this fascinating finding. It's often the unhappy people who are the most self-focused, maybe withdrawn, sometimes even, antagonistic. Happy people, though, they tend to be more sociable, more flexible, creative, tolerant, loving, forgiving. They just seem to contribute more naturally.
That's exactly right. And researchers have even done these really clever experiments to show this. In one, they set it up so someone would find money in a phone booth just to give their mood a little boost,
Yeah.
Then nearby, an experimenter would accidentally drop a big pile of papers. And the people whose moods were boosted, they were significantly more likely to stop and help pick them up.
Wow.
And another one, people listened to a comedy album, made them feel good.
Easy.
Afterwards, they were way more willing to lend money to someone who asked. Quite clear.
That's so relatable, isn't it? Think about being stuck in traffic. If you're actually in a good mood, maybe you slow down, let that person merge in, easy.
Yeah.
But if you're already feeling grumpy and miserable, PFF, you speed up, close the gap, maybe mutter something like, hey, I waited, why shouldn't they? It's a small thing, but it shows how our inner state just spills out, right?
Precisely. It really hammers home the principle. Pursuing your own happiness isn't just good for you. It actually benefits your family, your community, society as a whole. A happier you is generally a more giving, more helpful you, creates this positive ripple.
Okay, so let's quickly recap the big ideas from this first part. First, the Dalai Lama says the whole purpose of life is seeking happiness. Second, he's convinced this is achievable, mainly through training the mind, or sem, that whole psyche. And third, kind of counterintuitively, happy people tend to be more altruistic. So working on your own happiness, it actually benefits everyone around you. Maybe something to think about. What's one small mind training habit you could try this week? See what ripples it creates. The roots of contentment, beyond external circumstances. All right, so building on that idea of training the mind, the book digs into where this happiness actually comes from. And, spoiler alert, It's often not where we think. They share these really great stories. One is about a friend, just 32, who retired after her company had this massive success. Huge windfall.
Wow, lucky her.
You'd think. But she found that after the initial buzz wore off, she was really much happier than before. Now contrast that with another friend, same age, who got devastating news. He was HIV positive. Terrible shock, obviously.
Oh, absolutely.
But later, he actually reported feeling happier than ever. He started appreciating just daily life more, got into spirituality. It's a really stark contrast.
And those stories just perfectly illustrate this core principle, don't they? That genuine happiness is determined much more by your state of mind than by whatever's happening externally. Which brings in this concept of adaptation, how our happiness levels tend to drift back to a kind of baseline after big highs or deep lows.
Right, like the lottery winners you mentioned. The thrill fades.
Exactly. Or even people who survive catastrophic illnesses. After adjusting, they often report similar day-to-day happiness levels as before. We just adapt.
So if we tend to bounce back to this baseline,
Yeah.
what sets it? Is it just genetics?
Yeah.
And more importantly, can we actually change it? The book touches on that idea of a genetic set point for happiness, maybe. But it immediately says, look, the real power lies in the mind factor, your outlook, your perspective. That's where the leverage is.
And that's where the comparing mind comes in, and it's huge. How content we feel is so often tied to how we stack ourselves up against others. H.L. Mencken's definition of a wealthy man?
Remind me.
He said it's one whose income is $100 a year higher than his wife's sister's husband.
Huh. Perfect. It captures it exactly.
It does. Constantly comparing ourselves. Who's smarter, better looking, more successful. It just breeds dissatisfaction, envy, unhappiness. It's a trap.
But here's the twist.
Yeah.
You can actually use this same comparing tendency positively if you're mindful about it. The book mentions experiments, I think, University of Wisconsin, SUNY Buffalo, where people just completed sentences like, I'm glad I'm not a cot.
Yeah.
And just doing that, consciously shifting focus to what they had or what difficulties they didn't have, actually boosted their life satisfaction significantly. It's about choosing your comparison point.
It really does reinforce how powerful our mental outlook is. The Dalai Lama talks about these 4 factors of fulfillment: wealth, worldly satisfaction, spirituality, and enlightenment. And he says, sure, good health, money, friends, these can be sources of happiness, but only if your state of mind is right.
Right, the foundation has to be there.
Exactly. He gives these vivid examples. If you're consumed by anger, it ruins your health. Your possessions become meaningless. He often points out how materially rich societies can still have so much mental unrest, frustration, conflict, drug use, even suicide. The external stuff isn't enough.
He also talks about calmness of mind, which isn't being cold or indifferent, right?
Not at all. It's actually described as a deeply sensitive state, but one that's rooted in affection and compassion. Very different from apathy. So he sums it up: without that inner discipline leading to mental calm, no amount of external stuff, luxury, possessions, whatever, will bring lasting joy. And he calls out greed, too, that exaggerated, bottomless desire that's never satisfied. True contentment is the antidote.
It really makes you think of Christopher Reeve's story. I mean, paralyzed from the neck down, yet he found a way to call himself a lucky guy.
Incredible story.
He chose to focus on his assets, his mind, his family's love, and use them to help others. It's just such a powerful example of inner contentment trumping horrific external circumstances.
And this leads right into another critical distinction the book makes: the difference between true happiness and just fleeting pleasure. Apparently, the Dalai Lama had this hearty laugh when Dr. Cutler asked him if sexual activity was the highest form of happiness.
I can picture that.
Right. And he basically said, no, true happiness is profound, it's lasting, it's about liberation from suffering, physical pleasure that's unstable, it comes and goes, very different things.
That distinction seems simple, but it had a huge impact on one of Dr. Cutler's patients, Heather. She was a counselor, loved her job, but hated living in Phoenix because of the heat. She had this option to move to a beautiful mountain town, but for a job she knew she wouldn't enjoy nearly as much. Big dilemma. Dr. Cutler just asked her, which option would bring you greater happiness and which would bring you greater pleasure?
That's a great question.
Total aha moment for her. She realized the mountain town job was immediate pleasure, nice scenery, escape the heat, but the Phoenix job, despite the heat, offered deeper, more lasting happiness and fulfillment. She stayed. And she found the heat was suddenly much more bearable because she'd made a conscious choice for genuine happiness over immediate pleasure.
That story just nails it, doesn't it? The right choice, as the book puts it, often means consciously giving up some immediate pleasure for that deeper, long-term, genuine happiness. It's about knowing the difference and prioritizing.
Okay, so key insights for this part. First, your happiness really hinges more on your inner state of mind than external stuff. We adapt, we return to a baseline. Second, that comparing mind can be a source of misery, or you can flip it and use comparison positively by shifting your focus. Third, inner discipline, achieving that calmness of mind, that contentment, is absolutely fundamental. And finally, making that crucial distinction between true, lasting happiness and just fleeting pleasure. That's key for making wise life choices. Training the mind, a path to transformation. Okay, so if the mind is the main tool, and assuming our basic needs are met, the book basically says our mind is all the gear we need for complete happiness. There's a pretty amazing idea. So the million-dollar question, how do we actually train it? What's the method?
Well, the first step laid out is really about learning. With a capital L almost, you need to deeply understand how negative emotions, hatred, jealousy, anger are genuinely harmful, how they wreck your mental peace, create fear, isolation, and conversely, you need to learn how positive emotions, kindness, compassion are genuinely helpful, how they build connection and well-being.
So it's about really knowing the consequences deep down.
Exactly, and that deep understanding, that conviction, is what fuels the determination to actually change. Without that why, the motivation isn't really there.
And that connects right into a core Buddhist principle, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Causality. If you want happiness, you have to create the causes of happiness. If you want to avoid suffering, you remove the causes of suffering. Very direct.
Precisely. And you asked earlier, if it sounds simple, why are so many people unhappy?
Right.
The book makes it really clear. Genuine happiness isn't some quick fix. There's no one key that unlocks everything. It's a complex transformation. It needs lots of different approaches, like a healthy body needs a whole range of vitamins, not just one magic pill. And like getting used to a new climate physically, this deep mental change just takes time. It's gradual.
The book even gives a practical daily method, which I like, setting a positive motivation in the morning. Something simple like, okay, today I'm going to try to use this day in a more positive way. And then at night, just checking in. How did I do? Did I manage it? It's like a simple daily accountability check for your mind.
Yeah, it builds that habit of awareness. And the Dalai Lama himself is very open about his own journey. He calls it a constant battle to replace negative conditioning. He compares negative thoughts to waves on the ocean's surface. They happen, but they don't have to disturb the deep underlying calm of the mind.
That's a great image.
And he mentions how because he's practiced for so long, even if he hears tragic news or feels irritated, it passes really quickly. It doesn't derail his fundamental state of mind. That's the result of training.
And the science is really starting to back this up, isn't it? The book talks about brain plasticity. Neuroscientists have actually documented how the brain can physically change, how it can design new patterns.
Right. That finger tapping experiment is fascinating. People practiced a simple sequence daily for weeks.
Yeah.
And the area of their brain controlling those fingers actually got measurably larger. The brain physically adapted to the repeated mental focus and action.
Wow. So that provides a real physiological basis for this idea of inner transformation.
Exactly. Mobilizing thoughts, focusing attention, practicing new ways of thinking. It literally reshapes our neural connections. Yeah. Training the mind for happiness isn't just some nice spiritual idea. It's grounded in biology now.
And what about the word discipline? The book clarifies it's not like external force, not like the discipline a criminal gang uses for a heist.
Right, not that kind.
It's profound self-discipline, the inner commitment to consciously overcome our own negative patterns.
Yeah. And remember your earlier question about why we need education if avoiding suffering is natural. The book explains it's more complex than just pulling your hand from a fire. Judging the long-term consequences of our thoughts, our anger, our attachments, that requires sophisticated knowledge. Society, he notes, often trains us to be clever, for external success, but maybe not enough for this kind of deep internal transformation for lasting peace.
Okay, so key ideas here. Once basic needs are sorted, the mind is the main tool for happiness. Step one in training, it is learning, really understanding what helps and what harms.
Yeah.
Genuine change isn't quick or easy. It's complex, long-term, like building a muscle. And brain plasticity science supports this. Our minds can change. And finally, it takes real self-discipline and that deeper, sophisticated knowledge to understand the long game of our inner states, reclaiming our innate goodness, the seed of compassion. Okay, this next part gets into something really fundamental, maybe controversial for some. The Dalai Lama's deep belief that our basic human nature is actually gentleness, that we inherently have the potential for compassion. Given everything we see in the world, what does he base that incredibly optimistic view on?
Well, he offers a few layers of reasoning. First, there's the Buddhist doctrine of Buddha nature, this idea of an underlying pure nature of mind in all beings, even if it's hidden.
Okay, the spiritual basis.
Right, but he doesn't just leave it there. He points to the actual pattern of human existence. From birth, we need affection to survive. Think of a baby needing its mother's milk, that bond. Without that mutual care, we wouldn't make it. And he also points to the tangible effects. A calm, affectionate mind clearly benefits our physical and emotional health. Anger, agitation, they consistently harm us. Our bodies seem designed for gentleness.
It makes a lot of sense when you put it that way. But then, the paradox. If our nature's fundamentally kind, why is there so much conflict, so much aggression, cruelty? How does he square that?
His explanation is that these conflicts don't come from our core nature itself. They come from what he calls unbalanced human intelligence.
Imbalanced intelligence.
Yes. He suggests intelligence is like a powerful tool, maybe a later development evolutionarily. But if it's not balanced with wisdom and compassion, it can become incredibly destructive. Our cleverness, misused, causes the problems.
Okay, so if intelligence, unbalanced, causes the problems, then balanced intelligence can solve them.
Precisely. That's the hope. The solution, he argues, lies in consciously combining that warm heart, our innate capacity for compassion, with knowledge and education. That combination fosters respect for others, for different views, and becomes the basis for reconciliation. He truly believes the ultimate answer to conflict, big and small, is getting back in touch with that basic, gentle, compassionate human nature.
I really like the analogy the book uses, the seed of compassion. It's like our capacity for language. It's innate, it's there, but it needs the right conditions to flourish, like parents modeling kindness, a supportive environment. It suggests it's within us, just waiting.
And it directly challenges that common self-interest model of human behavior, the idea that we're all just fundamentally selfish. The book offers this alternative. Maybe infants aren't just about getting their needs met. Maybe they're also born with an innate ability to bring pleasure to others. Well, think about a baby nursing. It relieves the mother's tension. Or a baby's smile, it triggers this powerful caregiving instinct in adults. It suggests we're wired not just to receive, but also maybe to please, to connect.
Wow. The implication of actually believing that humanity's basic nature is compassionate, that changes how you see everyone, doesn't it?
It really does. If you start from that premise, it can lead to more relaxation in your interactions, more trust, and ultimately more happiness for yourself. It shifts the whole dynamic. And the Dalai Lama constantly comes back to his view on time. It's so precious. How should we use it? By serving others, he says, or at the very least, by consciously refraining from harming them, developing kindness and compassion. That's what makes life truly meaningful, peaceful, and joyful in his view.
Okay, so the core principles here are really powerful. First, the idea that humans have an innate, gentle, compassionate nature. Second, conflicts stem not from that nature, but from unbalanced intelligence. Third, we can consciously return to our basic goodness by combining a warm heart with knowledge. Fourth, that seed of compassion is within us, ready to grow under the right conditions. And finally, acting selflessly doesn't just help others. It brings deep joy and meaning to our own lives. Human warmth and compassion. Expanding our circle. I have to share this little story from the book right away. Dr. Cutler asks the Dalai Lama pretty directly, do you ever get lonely? And his answer was just, no.
Right.
Simple, confident. So unexpected, right?
It really was striking, and his explanation was fascinating. He said he tries to look at everyone he meets from a positive angle. That immediately creates this feeling of affinity, of connection. He also mentioned acting with less apprehension, less fear of being judged, just being open. And you contrast that with Western society. Studies show so many adults feel deeply lonely.
Yeah, it's a real issue.
The Dalai Lama's approach seems to bypass just working on social skills. It goes right to the root, cultivating genuine compassion for everyone.
The book introduces this Buddhist idea, the field of merit. The idea that interacting with others through kindness, generosity, tolerance, it's actually a way to accumulate positive energy or merit for yourself. Reading that was a real light bulb moment for me. Suddenly seeing the illusion of being totally self-reliant and feeling this deeper sense of interconnectedness, it felt softening.
It definitely highlights a kind of Western paradox, doesn't it? We crave intimacy, connection, yet we also celebrate fierce independence, and we often focus so much energy on finding the one. Dalai Lama's model is just broader. He aims to connect with everyone, to feel close to as many people as possible. It's a much more inclusive idea of intimacy.
So practically, how do you do that? He initially says, look, there's no single formula like cooking. You need lots of ingredients. But he does give some guidelines.
Yeah, and the crucial first step, he emphasizes, is approaching others with genuine compassion. But he's realistic. Just telling someone be compassionate doesn't work.
Right. Easier said than done.
You need to use reasoning. Really educate yourself on why compassion is valuable, what its benefits are for you and others, and consistently reflect on how you feel when someone treats you with kindness. That process kind of primes the pump.
And empathy is a huge part of that, right? Being able to genuinely feel or appreciate someone else's suffering.
Absolutely. The book mentions a Buddhist technique visualizing suffering, like imagining a sheep about to be slaughtered to cultivate that feeling, but he suggests modifying it. Maybe start with something closer, imagining a hunter's dog caught in a trap or a family member who's struggling. You build that empathy muscle gradually.
So the bigger principle is just putting yourself in their shoes, trying to see it from their side, suspending your own judgment for a moment.
Yes. That develops awareness, respect, and it's so critical for reducing conflict, whether it's with your partner, your boss, or even on a global scale.
It reminds me of that story Dr. Cutler tells about the taxi ride in India. He was furious because the driver tried to cheat them, just seething. But his friend, who was with him, stayed totally calm. And she started imagining the driver's life, his struggles, his poverty, maybe how cheating felt like his only option to feed his family. Dr. Cutler had this moment of seeing his own rigid anger, his lack of perspective. It was a powerful lesson learned right there in the back of a cab.
That's a great illustration. And it leads to the Dalai Lama discussing different kinds of relationships. Those based on external things, wealth, power, status, he says they're unstable. They crumble when the external factor disappears.
Makes sense.
Versus genuine friendship, which is based on real human feeling, deep affection, that's stable. And he applies this to marriage, too, cautioning against relationships built only on, say, initial sexual attraction, because that often lacks the deeper foundation for lasting happiness.
Okay, so recapping this section. Loneliness isn't inevitable. It can be overcome by cultivating broad compassion and a positive outlook towards everyone. Seeing others as a field of merit underscores our interconnectedness and aids our own growth. Genuine intimacy, in this view, isn't limited to just one person. It can extend to all beings. Empathy and perspective-taking are vital tools for reducing conflict and building better relationships across the board. And finally, relationships founded on genuine human feeling are far more resilient and fulfilling than those based on fleeting external factors. The power of compassion, a path to health and meaning. Now, the book makes it really clear that for the Dalai Lama, compassion isn't just, being nice. It's absolutely central to his entire spiritual path. So how exactly does he define compassion? What is chewa?
Sewa, the Tibetan word. He defines it as a fundamentally nonviolent, non-harming state of mind. It's rooted in this deep wish for others to be completely free from suffering, and it's coupled with a real sense of commitment, responsibility, and profound respect for their right to be happy. He even says it can start with wishing for your own well-being, and then you consciously expand that circle outward to include everyone.
And he draws a really important line between genuine compassion and compassion that's kind of mixed up with attachment. That seems subtle but significant.
Oh, it's huge. Attachment-tinged compassion, he explains, is often based on she's my friend or he's related to me. It can become controlling, it seeks something back, and it's unstable because it depends on that personal connection or how the other person behaves.
Right, it's conditional.
Exactly. Genuine compassion, though, is based simply on the other being's fundamental right not to suffer. Period. He uses that powerful image of seeing a fish struggling with a hook in its mouth. You feel unbearable pain for the fish, regardless of whether it's your pet fish or just some random fish. That genuine compassion is much stronger, much broader, much more stable and durable because it's unconditional.
Okay, but here's a question that might pop up for people. Why would we want to deliberately take on someone else's suffering? We spend so much energy avoiding our own pain, it feels almost counterintuitive.
It does on the surface, but the Dalai Lama explains there's a really important qualitative difference. Our own suffering often makes us feel overwhelmed, isolated, helpless, maybe even numb. But when you consciously take on another's suffering with a compassionate mind, yes, there might be discomfort initially, but paradoxically, it brings this high level of mental alertness, determination, a deep feeling of connection. It's described as a kind of freshness.
Like an athlete pushing through pain for a bigger goal.
Exactly, like an athlete's joyful endurance of hard training because they know it serves a higher, more expansive purpose. It's suffering transformed by intention.
He also mentions some specific Buddhist techniques for cultivating this, right? Like the 7-point cause and effect method.
Yes, he touches on those as established paths. Then he tackles this idea of the real value of human life. He poses this hypothetical. A wealthy businessman says he's perfectly happy, doesn't need compassion.
Yeah.
The Dalai Lama basically says, I doubt he's deeply happy. He asserts that compassion is absolutely essential, not just for individual well-being, but for human survival and for giving life true value. Relationships built on money or status, superficial, they vanish when the money's gone. Compassion, that's internal, it's always there, it's reliable.
Okay, but here's where the argument gets really persuasive, even for someone maybe skeptical or, let's say, primarily self-interested. The book argues strongly for compassion based on self-interest. How does that work?
It's compelling. The book cites actual scientific evidence. David McClelland's study at Harvard students watched a film about Mother Teresa's work. Their levels of immunoglobulin A, an antibody that fights colds and infections, actually increased afterwards, just from witnessing compassion.
Wow, a physical effect.
Yeah. And James House at University of Michigan found that regular volunteer work significantly increased life expectancy more than quitting smoking even. George Vaillant's long-term studies concluded an altruistic lifestyle is critical for mental health. And Alan Lux coined the term helper's high, that feeling of euphoria and calm people get from volunteering. It's real, measurable benefits.
That story of Joseph, the building contractor, is just incredible. Goes from multi-millionaire luxury to losing absolutely everything, money, marriage, status, total devastation.
Right, rock bottom.
But then he starts volunteering, using his skills to help underprivileged people build homes. And he finds this immense joy, this deep happiness. He literally says he's happier than I've ever been in my life. Happier than when he was rich. It's just...
Those real stories make it so concrete. And the Dalai Lama even offers a simple meditation on compassion anyone can try. You start by really recognizing your own deep wish to be happy and avoid suffering. Feel it. Then consciously extend that exact same feeling out to others. Visualize their suffering, connect it to your own experience. It builds that bridge.
Okay, so key principles from this powerful section. Compassion, sewa, is that nonviolent wish for others to be free from suffering based on respect. Genuine compassion is different from attachment-tinged love. It's unconditional and much stronger. Voluntarily embracing others' suffering, when done with the right intention, is actually empowering, not depleting. And critically, compassion brings demonstrable physical and emotional health benefits, making it a rational choice, even from a purely self-interested perspective.
Embracing reality.
Okay, so we try to avoid suffering, obviously. But the book really emphasizes, look, it's just part of life, it's unavoidable. And the Dalai Lama seems to approach it with this almost martial spirit, ready to face it directly.
Yeah, he explains the principle behind that. It's about familiarizing yourself with potential suffering before it hits. Things like old age, sickness, death. If you mentally prepare, think about them beforehand, it reduces the shock and the mental turmoil when they actually happen. It's like those military drills, they prepare soldiers so they're less reactive in actual combat.
He's realistic, though, right?
Yeah.
He acknowledges some situations, like having a child with a severe birth defect, are just incredibly very difficult. There aren't easy answers.
Absolutely. It's not about pretending the problems aren't real. Mental preparation helps you cope, reduces fear, but it doesn't magically make the problem vanish. He even has that sort of dark humor line about birthdays. People say happy birthday. But from his viewpoint, the day you're born is the birth of suffering. It's a stark framing, but it points to a reality.
So given that reality, what should our attitude be? How do we approach suffering mentally?
The crucial principle here is about transforming our attitude towards suffering, cultivating greater tolerance, greater acceptance. If you can start to see suffering not as a personal attack or something fundamentally wrong, but as part of the underlying nature of samsara, that cycle of unenlightened existence, it really lessens those feelings of being singled out, of being a victim. He mentions how many Tibetans view their immense national suffering through this lens. It's part of samsara. It doesn't mean they like it, but it changes the mental reaction.
To some ears, that might sound a bit pessimistic, maybe even fatalistic.
He addresses that directly. Within the Buddhist context, understanding suffering this way is actually vital because it points to the possibility of a way out. Freedom from suffering is possible, he says, by removing its root causes, ignorance, craving, hatred, the three poisons. So contemplating suffering isn't meant to be morbid. It's actually motivation to practice, to find that path to liberation.
That makes sense. What about personal loss? I was really interested in how the Dalai Lama himself dealt with the death of his close brother, Lobsang Samden, and others he loved.
He talks about feeling very, very sad and a sense of regret, specifically for not being there to help his brother right at the end. But, and this is key, that sadness and regret didn't make him cold or shut down, nor did it lead to self-pity or blame. He explained that the Tibetan language doesn't really have a word quite like our Western concept of guilt.
Really, no guilt.
They have remorse, yes, but it seems to carry this inherent sense of, okay, what can I learn? How can I rectify this or do better in the future? It's forward-looking, not just dwelling on the past mistake with self-blame.
That's a big difference. And for those of us who maybe don't share that specific Buddhist framework, what's the practical advice for dealing with loss?
His advice is wonderfully pragmatic. Excessive worry, getting stuck in grief, it harms you, and it does absolutely nothing to benefit the person who has passed away. The best way to honor their memory, he suggests, is to try and fulfill their positive wishes, to carry on their legacy with a calm and constructive mind. Focus on positive action.
Okay, summarizing these points, getting familiar with potential suffering beforehand really does lessen the blow when it arrives. Transforming our attitude to one of greater tolerance is key. Seeing suffering, even as part of life's nature, can paradoxically motivate us to seek freedom from its roots. And dealing with loss involves accepting reality, learning from regret without destructive guilt, and focusing on positive, forward-looking action.
The power of our response.
This next part kicks off with a really vivid story, a man who's still absolutely furious about his divorce, 17 years later, just stewing in it. It's a perfect setup for how we often create our own suffering, long after the event.
It really is. The Dalai Lama explains how we actively pour fuel on the fire. If someone treats us unfairly and we keep replaying it, thinking about the injustice, rehearsing our anger, we just make the anger stronger, more intense, it becomes self-inflicted. Or maybe we're just overly sensitive, overreacting to small things, like the boss being a bit short because they had a bad morning. We take it personally and add this whole layer of unnecessary pain.
So the key takeaway here is about our response, right?
Exactly. The principle is, your pain isn't just caused by the event, it's largely created by how you respond to the event. He uses the example of slander. Someone says something nasty about you. If you react with hurt, anger, defensiveness, you destroy your own peace. If you can let it pass like a silent win, as he puts it, recognize it's their issue, not necessarily reality. You protect your inner calm.
But it's so easy to fall into that "it's not fair" feeling. That sense of injustice can be overwhelming. How do we handle that?
The book offers a few paths. For someone with a Buddhist background, it might involve accepting suffering as a natural outcome of karma, understanding karma not as passive fate, but as the active result of past actions, creating present reality. For someone with faith in God, it might be finding acceptance within a larger divine plan, trusting there's a reason, even if unseen.
Okay, but what about for non-believers? Is there a secular approach?
Absolutely. He suggests a very practical, almost scientific method. First, objectively analyze the problem. Is there something you can actually do about it? If yes, then bravely put your energy into finding and implementing the solution. Don't just worry, act. But if, after careful analysis, you determine there's truly no solution, nothing you can do, then, he says, there is absolutely no point in worrying. You must simply accept it and move on. Worrying won't change it. It only adds to your suffering.
That takes discipline, though.
It does. But he also points out that this analytical approach helps you see other factors involved. Maybe the boss was having a terrible day. And crucially, it helps you see your own contribution to the situation, however small. He uses the Gulf War as an example, blaming everything solely on Saddam Hussein while ignoring all the complex contributing factors and one's own potential role is a distorted view. Reality is usually multi-causal. Taking some responsibility empowers you.
Going back to the Dalai Lama personally, he mentioned his deep regret about that monk's suicide. When Dr. Cutler asked him how he got rid of that regret, his answer was really striking.
Yeah, he said, I didn't get rid of it. It's still there.
Yeah.
Which is quite unexpected.
Definitely.
But then he clarified, it wasn't a heaviness, it wasn't pulling me back into despair or inaction. He consciously chose not to let it weigh him down, focusing instead on his work, on helping others. It highlights that difference again. Regret, the acknowledgement of a past event, can exist without morphing into that crippling, self-destructive guilt that's so prevalent in Western culture.
Okay, so distilling this, we often amplify our own suffering by how we react, by replaying negativity. Our response, not just the event, determines our pain. Dealing with unfairness involves accepting suffering's reality, analyzing objectively, act if possible, accept is not, and acknowledging our own part. And powerfully, regret can be present as a memory and a lesson without becoming debilitating guilt.
The enemy as teacher.
I love the story that starts this section. The ancient Greek philosopher's student who paid people to insult him for 3 years just to learn patience. And then finally, he could just laugh when someone insulted him for free. It perfectly sets up the power of perspective.
It really does. Shifting perspective, as the Dalai Lama explains it, means consciously looking for multiple angles on any situation. If you're furious with someone, make yourself look for their positive qualities too. If a situation seems totally negative, actively search for potential opportunities or hidden benefits. That perception we often have that someone is 100% bad, an enemy, or 100% good, a friend, he calls that a mental projection. It's rarely the full reality.
It sounds straightforward, but the book really stresses that this takes effort. You have to seriously search for those other perspectives and then actively reinforce them in your mind. It's not passive insight.
Definitely not. And he identifies hatred as maybe the greatest stumbling block to developing compassion. He compares it to a fisherman's hook. It just traps you. But then comes this radical, almost mind-bending idea, seeing your enemy as your great teacher.
Yeah, that's a tough one for many people. Why a teacher?
Because, he argues, your enemy provides you with the rare, invaluable opportunity to practice patience and tolerance. Your friends usually don't push those buttons. Developing patience is essential for compassion, and enemies give you the perfect, challenging workout.
I have to admit, reading that part, especially the bit about a Buddhist prayer that talks about offering victory to your enemies, I had this moment of thinking, okay, but what about real evil? Rape, torture, murder, does this apply? It felt almost naive initially.
And that's where you see the Dalai Lama's incredible humility and willingness to reevaluate. He didn't just dismiss the concern. He acknowledged that in extreme cases, maybe the prayer needs modification. And he spoke from deep personal experience losing his country, hearing countless horrific stories from refugees about atrocities committed by the Chinese. He mentioned that chilling story about Chinese teachers forcing Tibetan kids to kill animals for points to deliberately break their compassionate spirit. This wasn't abstract theory for him. He gets the harsh realities.
Reflecting on that, it was humbling. It made me realize how limited my own perspective was in that moment. And the Dalai Lama then pivots to a broader point. Widening perspective isn't just personal. It's crucial for cooperating with others to tackle global crises. It connects the inner work to outer action.
Which leads right into the importance of flexible thinking. A supple, adaptable mind is crucial for survival, he says, in our turbulent world. It helps you see problems from many sides, integrate conflicts. He even notes how he's sometimes accused of having no consistent policy because he adapts his approach. But he says his flexibility is always rooted in those deep, unchanging principles. Goodness, compassion, kindness. The strategy might change, the core values don't.
So how does this relate to finding balance in our lives?
Avoiding extremes is presented as a cornerstone of happiness. Like watering a plant too much or too little is harmful. Same with diet. Mentally, it means if you're feeling arrogant, contemplate suffering to bring yourself down to earth. If you're feeling discouraged, reflect on your successes and potentials to lift yourself up. He calls spiritual practice dharma a voltage stabilizer for the mind, keeping it steady.
But does avoiding extremes mean life becomes bland? Isn't excitement often found in extremes?
He addresses that. Often, he suggests, extreme behavior comes from underlying dissatisfaction, a craving that's not being met healthily. Think of excessive gambling or risky behaviors. They might provide a temporary thrill, but often lead to long-term suffering. Narrow-mindedness is another extreme. Thinking your way is the only way, like everyone must be Buddhist. That causes problems too. Broadening your outlook, he says, is like going to a restaurant. You can appreciate all the different dishes on the menu without insisting everyone order the same thing you did. You appreciate diversity.
Okay, wrapping up this section's principles. Shifting perspective can fundamentally change how we experience difficult situations. Even enemies can become great teachers by giving us chances to practice patience and tolerance. True flexibility involves both inner adaptability and outer cooperation on global issues. Avoiding extremes in thought and action leads to balance and helps prevent self-inflicted suffering. And broadening our outlook helps overcome narrow-mindedness and appreciate different paths, finding meaning in pain, empathy's genesis. Circling back to that idea that suffering can actually deepen us. The book shares this really powerful story about Robert, a CEO. He hit a major financial crisis, fell into a severe depression, just devastating. But his wife, Karen, said that during his absolute worst moments, she would just hold him for hours. And she described it as the first time in their 23 years of marriage, she had felt such profound closeness, such intimacy with him. His vulnerability opened a door.
It's a beautiful, albeit painful, illustration, and it connects to that Buddhist practice mentioned earlier, Tonglen, visualizing, taking on pain, and giving resources. The core idea is that suffering, by making us acutely aware of our own pain and vulnerability, can chip away at our arrogance. It can open our hearts and develop genuine empathy and compassion for others who are also suffering. It actually enhances our connection.
So the key principle here is quite profound. Our own awareness of pain, rather than something to just shut down, can become a tool for developing empathy, compassion, and ultimately a deeper connection with other human beings.
The journey of change.
All right, let's get practical. Making real, positive, lasting changes in our lives. How does the Dalai Lama break down that process? What are the steps?
He lays out a very clear, logical 5-step process. It starts with 1, learning or education, really getting clear about what behaviors or mental habits are harmful and which are helpful. Deep awareness first. Second is 2, conviction, developing a strong, unwavering belief that change is necessary and actually possible for you. Third comes 3, determination, strengthening that conviction into a firm, solid resolve to act. Fourth is 4, action. This is where you translate that determination into actual, sustained effort, doing the work. And 5th is 5, effort itself. He really stresses this consistent, persistent effort is absolutely critical for forging new positive habit patterns. Like quitting smoking, you need all 5 steps, but the ongoing effort is where the change solidifies.
The book talks about the importance of enthusiasm and a sense of urgency to really drive this, like the global response to AIDS or how communities rally after a natural disaster like the St. Louis floods. How do we cultivate that urgency for our own internal changes?
The Buddhist approach he describes is to constantly, vividly remind yourself of the destructive consequences of the negative behavior or mental state you want to change. Keep the why front and center. He also distinguishes between different kinds of apathy or laziness. There's biological low energy, okay, but then there's weakness of mind where you could act, but you just don't. For that second kind, consistently reflecting on the negative impacts of not changing is the antidote.
But let's be real, change is hard.
Right.
We have all this inertia, these ingrained habits, psychological resistance.
He acknowledges that, definitely. He explains it quite simply as inertia or habituation. We just get used to things. Our minds settle into grooves. So, the antidote. Use habituation to your advantage. Consciously, persistently cultivate positive habits until they become ingrained. Like his own habit of waking at 3:30 a.m. for meditation. It wasn't easy at first, but now it's just automatic. And he constantly emphasizes genuine, deep change takes time, often many, many years. He mentions his own 40-plus years of Buddhist practice. It's a lifelong journey.
So what about when you feel discouraged? When the change seems so slow, maybe you even slip back.
That's where taking the long view is essential. Don't expect overnight miracles. And the book brings in science again here. Education is linked to happier lives. Determination is key for high achievers, like in Benjamin Bloom's studies. Effort works. Think behavior therapy, or even those experiments where forcing a smile can actually lift your mood. Consistent effort pays off, even if slowly.
And what about realistic expectations? Especially in our Western culture, we seem bombarded with quick fix promises. Lose weight in a week, become enlightened in a weekend workshop.
Right. The Dalai Lama really pushes back against that. He stresses sustained effort, gradual growth, set high ideals, absolutely even as high as enlightenment for a Buddhist. But don't expect to get there tomorrow. It's about finding that balance, having aspiration, aiming high, but accepting where you are right now without harsh judgment, avoiding both unrealistic expectations and self-limiting low expectations.
Okay, but here's a really fundamental question for many. Can negative states like anger, hatred, jealousy, can they truly be eradicated? They feel so natural sometimes, so deeply wired.
His answer to that is a very firm, that is wrong. He argues that ignorance is also natural, but we know it can be dispelled through learning and insight. He explains it using 3 core Buddhist premises about overcoming these negative states, which they call delusions. First, they are distorted ways of seeing reality. They're based on misperception and lack of valid foundation. Anger, for example, often exaggerates the negative.
Okay, they're not based on truth.
Second, there are direct antidotes. Positive states like patience, tolerance, kindness directly counteract negative ones. And the wisdom factor, insight into the true nature of reality, acts like a general antidote, like pulling up a poisonous plant by its roots. And third, this is crucial, the essential nature of the mind itself is considered pure, luminous, often called Buddha nature. Negative emotions are like clouds obscuring the sun. They are not intrinsic to the sun itself, therefore they can be removed.
Is this kind of deep transformation only possible for monks or full-time practitioners?
Absolutely not. He's very emphatic about this. Even small steps, small positive changes are incredibly helpful for everyone, for lay people living busy lives. High spiritual realization, deep happiness, he believes it's possible for anyone, regardless of their lifestyle or when they start. It's never too late.
All right, let's recap the steps for change. It's a 5-step process. Learning, conviction, determination, effort, enthusiasm, and urgency help, often fueled by remembering the downsides of not changing. We can use habituation to our advantage, building positive patterns over time. Real change is gradual, requiring patience and realistic expectations. And fundamentally, negative emotions, though they feel ingrained, are seen as distortions, not intrinsic to our pure mind, and thus can be overcome with positive antidotes and wisdom, dealing with inner enemies, anger and anxiety. Let's jump into that story about the therapy patient encouraged to scream out her anger. She does it, maybe feels some release, but then feels just as furious the next day in traffic. It really captures a common experience, doesn't it?
It perfectly illustrates the Dalai Lama's perspective. He views anger and hatred as incredibly destructive. They impair judgment, make you almost insane in the moment. They cause an ugly physical reaction. And most importantly, they are an inner enemy.
An inner enemy.
Yes, one that works constantly from the inside to destroy your peace, your well-being. Unlike an external enemy you might fight occasionally, anger is always potentially there, undermining you. It serves no positive function, only harm.
So what about that common therapeutic idea of expressing anger? To get it out, letting it rip.
He acknowledges it might offer some temporary relief for really bottled up feelings, like blowing dust out of a conch shell, as he puts it, a temporary clearing. But generally, he believes expressing anger tends to increase it. It reinforces the habit, strengthens those neural pathways. So the better approach, he argues, is a cautious attitude towards anger and actively working to reduce its power using mental antidotes.
Okay, so if just letting it out isn't the best long-term strategy, what's the alternative? How do we actually manage it when it flares up?
His method involves prevention first. Cultivating inner contentment, kindness, compassion, these make the mind less fertile ground for anger. But when anger does arise, the approach is to confront it, analyze its causes, what really triggered it. Then, consciously apply the antidotes, deliberately cultivating patience, tolerance, thinking about the other person's suffering, perhaps. And if the anger is just too strong in the moment, overwhelming. He advises taking a time out, step away, physically if possible. Think about something else entirely until you calm down. Then, once calm, analyze the situation rationally.
Well, what about the objection that being patient and tolerant, especially when someone is harming you or being unjust, is just a sign of weakness, that you're being a doormat?
He tackles that head on, firmly says, no. Real patience isn't weakness. It's a sign of immense strength. It requires powerful self-discipline, active restraint born from inner control, not fear. He distinguishes between good impatience, like wanting world peace now, and bad reactive impatience. And true humility, he says, isn't about being weak. It's about having the capacity to retaliate, but consciously choosing not to, based on wisdom and compassion.
Okay, but what if you're in a situation where you can't just walk away, where harm is happening or injustice is being done and countermeasures are needed?
He's very clear. Strong countermeasures might be absolutely necessary sometimes. You might need to act decisively to protect yourself or others. And this is the crucial difference, those actions can, and ideally should, stem from a place of compassion, even for the aggressor, concern for their long-term well-being, wishing they weren't creating negative karma for themselves. He applies this to his own approach regarding China opposing actions, but maintaining compassion for the people involved.
So how does forgiveness fit into all this?
Forgiveness, in his view, isn't something you force. It's the natural outcome, the natural product of successfully cultivating patience and tolerance. When you analyze the past situation clearly, when you see the futility of anger and hatred, how they only disturb your mind and don't change the past, forgiveness just arises. It flows naturally from that understanding.
Okay, key principles for handling anger. See it as an internal enemy that destroys your peace. Simply expressing anger often reinforces it. Reducing it is better. prevent it by cultivating positive states, manage it when it arises with analysis and antidotes like patience. Take a time out if needed. Patience is strength, not weakness. It's active restraint. Necessary countermeasures can be taken, but ideally from a place of compassion. And forgiveness naturally arises from patience and understanding the self-destructive nature of holding on to anger. Navigating anxiety, building true confidence. All right, let's talk about fear and anxiety, such common struggles. How does the Dalai Lama categorize different kinds of fear?
He makes a useful distinction. There's genuine fear, which has valid reasons, fear of violence, fear of the negative consequences of your own bad actions. These, interestingly, he calls the right kinds of fears because they can actually motivate you towards warm-heartedness, towards being more careful and ethical.
Okay, so some fear is constructive.
Right. But then there are the mental creations. These are the fears rooted in delusion, childish fears, projecting negativity onto situations or people without real basis. He even jokes about being scared of owls in the dark halls of the Potala Palace as a child. Those are the fears to challenge.
What about that chronic, low-level worry, that free-floating anxiety about daily problems, finances, work, the future?
His approach here is incredibly pragmatic, almost like a flowchart. Ask yourself, is there a solution to this problem? Can I do something about it? If yes, then there's no need to worry. Just put your energy into finding and acting on the solution. If there's truly nothing you can do, then there's absolutely no point in worrying. Worrying won't change it. It just makes you miserable. You must work on acceptance.
Simple, but not easy.
Not easy at all. He stresses it requires directly confronting the problem, analyzing it clearly, and then repeatedly reinforcing these rational conclusions in your mind until they sink in.
What about social anxiety? That fear of appearing foolish, messing up, being judged. The book mentions even the Dalai Lama felt this before big meetings with leaders like Mao or before giving public talks.
Yeah, it's reassuring that even he experiences that. His antidote is maybe surprising? Proper motivation and honesty.
How does that help?
His reasoning is, if your fundamental motivation is genuinely to benefit others, to share something useful, and not primarily to impress people or show off, then you don't need to worry so much about how you appear. If your intention is sincere and honest, fear diminishes. It takes the ego out of the equation, somewhat. Very different from just psyching yourself up.
There's that encouraging story of the shy college student.
Oh, yeah. He applied that sincere motivation idea. He wanted to ask a girl out, not just to score, but because he genuinely wanted to connect. Focusing on that sincere, harmless motivation gave him the courage to actually do it. She said no, it didn't lead to a date, but he felt great afterwards. He'd overcome his shyness because his underlying intention was good.
That's brilliant. Okay, shifting to self-esteem. Western culture talks about it constantly. How does this compare with Buddhist ideas of humility?
It's an interesting contrast. The Dalai Lama suggests that true self-confidence, the kind you see in deeply realized spiritual practitioners, isn't about arrogance or puffing yourself up. It's a boldness of mind that comes from sound reasons, from genuine understanding and inner stability, very different from insecure arrogance.
So how do we tell the difference? Healthy confidence versus groundless arrogance. It could look similar sometimes.
He admits it's sometimes only clear in hindsight or by looking at the results. Healthy confidence tends to lead to positive outcomes for everyone involved. Arrogance usually leads to mistakes and negative consequences eventually. He also distinguishes between an ego that's just focused on selfish desires versus an ego rooted in a genuine wish to help others. That second kind, paradoxically, requires strong, stable self-confidence to be effective.
What are the antidotes to pride then, if you feel yourself getting arrogant?
Two main ones, he suggests. Contemplate your own suffering, your own vulnerabilities that naturally brings humility. And second, reflect on the sheer vastness of knowledge that you don't have. Realizing how much you don't know is a great antidote to intellectual pride.
And that link between honesty and confidence comes up again, right? The Dalai Lama himself saying, I don't know so freely.
Exactly. That fearless, honest self-appraisal, knowing your strengths and your weaknesses realistically, is presented as a powerful weapon against self-doubt. When you know yourself honestly, you can like yourself genuinely, and confidence naturally arises. Pretending builds insecurity.
So where does this leave something like self-hatred, which is such a painful state for many people?
This was fascinating. The Dalai Lama was apparently quite surprised by the whole concept of self-hatred. When Dr. Cutler described it, it wasn't really a familiar idea in Tibetan culture.
Wow.
And this leads to a crucial point. He fundamentally believes self-hatred is not an intrinsic part of the human mind. It's a distortion, a learned pattern, and therefore it can be removed. His perspective is almost, of course we love ourselves. Everyone inherently wishes for their own happiness, their own freedom from suffering. That fundamental wish is a profound form of self-love, he argues, even if it gets twisted, like in suicidal thoughts, which he sees as a tragically misguided attempt to end unbearable suffering, not a true lack of self-love at the core.
So what's the antidote to self-hatred then?
For Buddhists, it's reflecting on their Buddha nature, that innate potential for perfection, goodness, and enlightenment within. For non-Buddhists, he suggests focusing on our incredible human intelligence, our capacity for determination, our potential for warmth and connection. Recognizing these inherent positive qualities counteracts the negativity of self-hatred.
Okay, summarizing this complex area, distinguish genuine, useful fears from baseless mental anxieties. Tackle chronic worry with the flowchart. Is there a solution? Act. No solution. Accept. Sincere motivation and honesty are powerful antidotes to social anxiety and fear of judgment. True self-confidence is grounded in reality and purpose, distinct from arrogance and linked to honesty. And, critically, self-hatred is not fundamental. It's a distortion that can be overcome by recognizing our inherent potential and underlying wish for happiness.
Self-love.
The essence of a spiritual life.
So this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, the final component in this art of happiness, spirituality. And the Dalai Lama has this amazing way of combining deep, rigorous spiritual training with this very down-to-earth, approachable quality. He really does. And he makes a really important distinction here between two levels or types of spirituality. First, there's spirituality related to specific religious beliefs and practices, Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, Judaism, etc. And because people have such different dispositions, he says, well, we probably need lots of different religions.
Yeah, makes sense.
But the second level is what he calls basic spirituality. And this isn't tied to any religion. It's about fundamental human qualities: goodness, kindness, compassion, caring for others, things inherent to being human.
And here's where it gets really interesting. He considers this second level, this basic spirituality, to be actually more important than formal religion. Why is that?
His reasoning is straightforward. These basic spiritual values, kindness, compassion, honesty, are essential for all human beings, whether they believe in a religion or not. He often points out something like 4 billion people on Earth are non-believers. Without these basic human qualities, he says, human existence becomes hard, very dry. It leads to unhappiness for individuals, families, whole societies. So education is crucial, not just academic, but education that instills these values as practical, essential human qualities, not just religious doctrines.
He shares some incredibly powerful personal testimony, too, how his deep Buddhist training, specifically his bodhisattva vows to help all beings, gave him the inner calmness and strength to feel compassion even towards the Chinese guards who tortured him. It's just extraordinary.
It truly is. And the book also acknowledges the immense sustaining power that formal religious faith can provide for many people. It mentions examples like Terry Anderson, the journalist held hostage for years in Lebanon, who found incredible strength through his faith and prayer. And numerous surveys confirm this link. People with strong religious faith often report higher levels of happiness, cope better with adversity, and sometimes even show better physical health outcomes after things like surgery. Faith clearly provides deep meaning and support for millions.
At the same time, we have to acknowledge the flip side, right? The divisiveness, the conflict, even hatred that can sadly be fueled in the name of religion sometimes.
Absolutely. And that's precisely why the Dalai Lama's focus on distilling these universal elements of a spiritual life, those basic human qualities, is so important. His core message cuts across religious boundaries. It's that cultivating goodness, compassion, warm-heartedness that's essential for everyone seeking a happy, meaningful life, regardless of their specific beliefs or lack thereof.
The book ends with this incredibly moving story. The Dalai Lama is moving through a crowd, security around him, and he notices this one man looking agitated, disheveled, clearly in pain. He stops everything, breaks away from his security, goes over to the man, takes his hand, looks into his eyes, and just silently nods for a moment. And Dr. Cutler, observing this, describes this palpable, felt presence radiating from the Dalai Lama.
And the effect on the man.
It was visible. The pain just seemed to drain from the man's face, replaced by this look of profound comfort, of gladness, of being truly seen. It was pure, unadulterated compassion in action, no words needed.
It's such a powerful closing image. It really encapsulates the core message, that inner discipline, that consistent work of combating our negative states and actively cultivating the positive ones: kindness, compassion, patience, wisdom. That is the fundamental method for achieving lasting happiness. That's what leads to that calm, stable, resilient mind. And practices like meditation can be powerful supports on that journey.
Wow. What an incredible deep dive into the art of happiness. It feels like the main takeaway isn't about some grand, heroic gesture, is it? It's more about those small, consistent efforts, that profound shift in how we see ourselves, others, and suffering itself. Just to recap the overarching principles we've explored. The purpose of life is happiness, achievable through training the mind. Happiness is fundamentally an inner state, not dependent on external conditions, and it's distinct from fleeting pleasure. We can transform suffering and overcome obstacles by shifting our perspective, cultivating genuine, non-attached compassion, and engaging in consistent self-discipline. This path requires balance, realistic expectations, and understanding that real change takes time. A core belief is that our fundamental human nature is compassionate, and aligning with this unlocks deep, lasting happiness. And finally, those basic spiritual values, kindness, compassion, warmth, are essential for all of us, religious or not, leading to a meaningful, joyful, and peaceful life.
And perhaps a final thought for you to mull over as you go about your day. How might your interactions, even the seemingly small, insignificant ones, change with the cashier, the person in traffic, your family, if you approach them from the fundamental assumption that everyone you meet, deep down, carries that same seed of compassion, that same deep wish to be happy and free from suffering? Just what might shift?
That's a powerful thought to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this really enriching exploration today. We truly hope you'll reflect on some of these principles and maybe find ways, even small ways, to apply them in your own life. Perhaps starting with one simple, conscious choice today. Until our next deep dive, take good care.
That's it from us today. This is Lisa and Jim signing off from Pod Talk. Hope you all have an informative session. Please like and subscribe for more such sessions. We hope to see you soon with a brand new topic of discussion.